So let's bring our motivation to mind, knowing that our motivation is the most important component of what we're about to do, because it will determine whether listening to teachings becomes something virtuous or not. So we might wonder how listening to teachings could be non-virtuous. Well, if we have a mind that just wants to gather information so that we can impress other people with it, so that perhaps we can write things or teach and earn an income, and receive a lot of praise and good reputation from teaching the Dharma, then that really contaminates just the simple act of listening to teachings. Whereas if we have a sincere motivation that really wants to learn so that we can put the teachings into practice, then listening to the same teachings becomes quite a wonderful action that will get us closer to awakening. So let's call up that sincere motivation that really wants to change, that wants to integrate the Dharma with our mind and integrate our mind with the Dharma, so that in the long term we can be of the most effective benefit to sentient beings. And if we have any doubt about sentient beings' confusion and how much they need good guidance, we can just look around us at what's happening in the country and see how important it is to learn and practice the Dharma, not necessarily as a religion, but as a common sense way of making our life meaningful. So let's have that kind of motivation. Okay, so we talked about history and refuge and the 16 attributes of the Four Truths, and now we're going to go into more depth about the fourth truth, true paths, because that's what we have to learn and practice in order to actualize the third truth, true cessations, which overcome the first two truths, true dukkha, and its causes. Okay, so we'll start with the first of the three higher trainings, ethical conduct. So here, in talking about ethical conduct, we're mostly talking about the pratimoksha precepts. Okay, in Tibetan Buddhism we have three types of ethical restraints. The pratimoksha, which they usually translate as individual liberation, although there's other translations as well. The bodhisattva and also the tantric precepts. So not everybody in all Buddhist traditions takes these three levels of ethical restraints, but the one that's common to both the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition are the pratimoksha ethical restraints. And they're the basic ones, because before you take bodhisattva precepts, it's good to be able to keep the pratimoksha ones. Before you take tantric commitments and so on, it's good to be able to keep the bodhisattva ones. Yeah, they build on each other in terms of difficulty. Okay, so the pratimoksha precepts mostly regulate actions of body and speech, and in order to regulate what we say and what we do, we of course have to work with our mind, because our mind is the source of the actions. Our mouth doesn't move, our body doesn't move, usually, unless it's a reflex action, unless there's an intention in the mind. Okay, so it comes from the mind. When we talk about the pratimoksha precepts, there's 8 different categories. So there's the one-day precepts, 8 one-day precepts. When people take anagarika precepts, what they're doing is taking those 8 one-day precepts for an extended period of time. Then we have the 5 precepts for men and for women. That's upasaka and upasika. So the 5 precepts are to abandon killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying and intoxicants. Then for the nuns, there's a training ordination called shikshamana. And then we have, wait a minute. Then we have, there's 8. Then we have the bhikshu and bhikshuni, or the fully ordained monks and fully ordained nuns. Okay? In the world right now of the 18 early schools that we started out with, we have the Vinayas ordination lineage of 3 of them. Okay, so the Pali one, sometimes it's called Theravada nowadays, but it's the Pali one, the Dharmaguptaka, and the Mula Sravastivada. So the Pali ordination is in South Asia, Southeast Asia. The Dharmaguptaka is in China, Korea, Vietnam, and the Mula Sravastivada is in Tibet and Mongolia. Okay, so more or less the precepts in these 3 Vinayas, Vinaya means monastic discipline or monastic conduct, more or less the precepts are the same in the 3, but there are some differences. But the differences are actually slight, considering that all of this was carried down by memory for many, many centuries before it was written down. Okay, so there's slight differentiations in the list of precepts and the definitions of transgressing certain ones and so on. The purpose of these precepts is to, like I said, regulate our body and speech, to help us refrain from committing non-virtue and to practice virtue. So we find this quite a bit, about virtue, non-virtue, wholesome, unwholesome, and the importance of creating good karma, which is also known as merit. Because in dealing with our mind, it's not just an issue of learning material and memorizing material and passing a test. It's a thing of really transforming our mind. So to transform our mind, we have to deal with some of the really recalcitrant aspects of our mind, our stubborn wrong views, our stubborn habits, our very ingrained disturbing emotions. So the precepts really help us see these things more clearly and to learn to moderate them. Okay? We take precepts because we are not capable of keeping them perfectly. If we were capable of keeping them perfectly, we wouldn't need to take them. Okay? So that doesn't mean it's okay to take precepts and go and break them. It just means the order here is practicing the precepts and then improving the quality of our mind. It's not like you first have to be a Buddha and then after that you take precepts. The precepts are a way of helping to train our mind so we can attain Buddhahood. So you need a certain level of self-confidence to take the different levels of precepts. And it's one's own individual choice. Nobody tells you what to do, to take these precepts or don't take those ones or whatever. But we choose to do it due to our own wisdom. Okay, in the ethical restraints, okay, the ones for the lay people, the 5 lay precepts, male and female, those two. The third precept is to refrain from unwise and unkind sexual behavior, which mainly refers to adultery if you're in a relationship, going outside of it, or if you're single, going with somebody who's in one. I think it also includes unprotected sex when there's the danger of STDs, and using people, for our own sexual pleasure without caring that they might be getting emotionally involved, and thus they might be hurt afterwards if they discover that we're just kind of using them for enjoyment. So in other words, having some consideration for other people's feelings. In the rest of the precepts, and especially with the monastic precepts, that third one is celibacy. Now that has come up as a big discussion in the Catholic Church. The Buddhists don't talk about it. Nobody wants to change that. But in the Church, it's a big topic of discussion. And people saying, well, celibacy is unnatural. And so His Holiness talks about this and says, well, in one way, if you think of just normal human behavior governed by biology, governed by our animal nature, then sexual behavior is quite natural, quite normal. Yeah. But in here, we take precepts because we're trying to get out of samsara. And sexual attachment is one of our deepest attachments. And so if you really want to get out of samsara, you have to cut the craving. And so taking the precepts, especially being celibate, helps to cut that kind of craving and reduce the attachment. And so, is more conducive for attaining liberation. Yeah, because the idea with attaining liberation is we're really going against the normal, average, worldly way of thinking and way of acting. Yeah, because if the regular, normal way of thinking and acting and perceiving things were accurate and fine, then we should already abide in perfect bliss and happiness and as Buddhas. Yeah, but you look around and people aren't abiding in perfect bliss and happiness, and they aren't fully awakened. Yeah, so then that makes us think, well, maybe what we're doing now is not the correct path to happiness, and we have to try something else. And so that, that's where it comes in to, to cut the craving instead of increase craving. Yeah, because the world around us is built on craving, isn't it? That's what we're taught since we're little kids. Yeah, you've got to want this and you've got to have that. And, be a patriotic citizen and buy things. Yeah, be a successful person and climb up the ladder of whatever career you're in. Yeah, so we're really encouraged to crave and to be attached and to cling. Yeah, and yet when we look around us with all the people who are doing that, do we see anybody who is truly happy? Yeah? Do we see anybody who's truly happy?
Some that are less miserable.
Yeah, that's it. Some that are less miserable. Yeah, but when we see beings who have really practiced a system of ethical conduct and abandon the clinging to some of these normal, natural things, those people often have a level of calm and tranquility and inner peace that we don't see in the people who are considered the most successful in the world. So worldly success and internal happiness do not necessarily go together. We think they do. Okay, that's part of why we're miserable. Okay, so there's His Holiness, again in the book, he talks about the value of the monastic community, why it's important to have monastics, and I think this explanation, again, is quite important now because, with Buddhism coming from Asia into the West, especially into America, which is by and large a Protestant country, then people don't understand what monastics are. With our culture that is so materialistic and consumeristic, they don't understand, why do you want to give up sense pleasure? Why do you want to live a simple lifestyle? So I think understanding the value of a monastic community and why people would take precepts is something that's quite important. Okay, why? Because it's important that the monastic community, the Sangha, continues to exist. Why? Because the Sangha, and here I'm referring to the monastic community, historically have been the ones entrusted with the job of learning the teachings, practicing them, preserving them, teaching them to others. Now, why has that been why have the monastics been entrusted with that? Well, because when you take precepts, you have more time to practice and study. Yeah. When you're married, those of you who are married and who have children, your lives are very busy. You have to go to work to, earn money. Children take a lot of time, and they may bring you some pleasure, but they bring you a lot of anxiety and worry too. And so monastics, by being celibate and not having those kind of intimate relationships, have a lot more time and a lot more mental space for the Dharma. It becomes easier to practice. And also having a community, because the Buddha set up the monastics as a community, not as just a bunch of individuals living here and there. And the reason is because when you have a community, there's more energy. You can do more than you can just as one individual. Yeah. And so, for example, we get people writing letters to us saying, we're far away, we live in Timbuktu, but we're so happy to know that you people at Sravasti Abbey are there and you're cultivating virtue and you're studying the Dharma, and it just makes our mind happy. Now, they would not think that with regard to one person. Yeah, but when you have a community of people doing it, it brings a certain feeling, that influences society. And I think that monastics in many ways act as the conscience of society. If we live a simple life, it's kind of a question to the rest of society. Do you really need to have everything that you think you need? Or, are there other ways to be content besides more and better, more and better? Okay. His Holiness in this chapter also emphasizes that wearing robes and shaving your head is not sufficient to be a monastic, that there has to be not just an external change. The external change is actually superficial, but there has to be an internal change, and that's the purpose. And so really encouraging people to practice. He also encourages Buddhists to really develop titles that correspond with what people are, because it's very confusing now when you sometimes have, like in the Japanese tradition, celibacy. They had the pratimoksha tradition in the early years, but then it began to fade out, and then the government made all the monastics return to lay life in the middle of the 19th century. And so, but still some people call themselves monastics, but they're married and they have families. And that becomes quite confusing for people. So he really says, if you're celibate, you can call yourself a monastic. If you're not, call yourself a priest or a reverend or, some other kind of title. Yeah. And he actually, His Holiness isn't real hot on titles to start with. He says that many people just, they may be nobody in the Tibetan community, and then they come to the West, and all of a sudden they're, His Eminence, the very venerable, Tulku Rinpoche, blah blah, and in Tibet they were just Tashi, and so he really encourages people not to be impressed with titles, not to be impressed with the height of the thrones and how much brocade there is, but to really look at people's qualifications. Okay, in this chapter he also talks a little bit about the issue of full ordination for women, which, is quite a topic now, because to take ordination, you need a requisite number of people to give the ordination, and they have to have been properly ordained, and they have to have been properly ordained, and so on. So there's this issue of lineage, so the precepts coming from the Buddha to his disciples, to their disciples, and down to the present day. In the case of giving the women's full ordination, you need a community of monks and a community of nuns, both of them fully ordained. The community of nuns, that lineage did not spread from India to Tibet, for example. There were the Himalaya mountains, and so it was difficult to get across them. And also when Shantarakshita brought the first cohort of monks to give ordinations, he didn't bring any nuns, probably because if there were monks and nuns traveling together in Tibet, the people would have gone, what's going on here? Celibate men and women traveling together. So he just brought monks, and there were no nuns who came. So that lineage was never spread in Tibet. It was spread in Sri Lanka, but it died out after the Kola invasion around when was that, 11th, 12th century, sometime around there. And it never got reinstituted, whereas the bhikshu, or full ordination for men, did get reinstituted in Sri Lanka. So nowadays you have, one mother sentient being. Where did he go? He vanished. So nowadays you have, many women who want to receive the full ordination who are now doing research on ways to take it. And, in the Theravada tradition and the Mula Sravastivada tradition, where the lineage doesn't exist, or many of us went to the Dharmaguptaka tradition as practiced in China and Taiwan and so forth, and took the full ordination there. Okay, so this is, a women's movement, I guess you could say, within Buddhism, that I think is quite important. And just to add a little spice, because people ask His Holiness about this, and he says as one individual, he cannot reinstore the women's ordination lineage. However, what he can do is increase education opportunities for the nuns. And so he's done that. And compared to when I first went to Dharamsala in the mid-70s, the education the nuns get now is incredible, so much improved. And in fact, whereas before the nuns could not get geshe degrees, geshe is like an educational degree, we now have in December the first 20 Tibetan nuns who are becoming geshes. And this is historic. This hasn't been in Tibetan Buddhism at all. And His Holiness himself will give the diplomas or certificates, whatever they are, So it's quite exciting. That'll be on December 22nd, so you can make prayers for the nuns. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. He also, he talks about 73. Okay. When he was talking about if you're going to be a monastic, you really have to be serious about it. It's not just a plaything that you do so you can sit in the front row or because you like to wear maroon. It's a serious thing. So I want to read you one paragraph here, what he wrote. Okay, wearing robes and shaving your head are not sufficient to be a monastic. One must keep the precepts well. Accepting offerings but not keeping the precepts well creates destructive karma that will ripen in an unfortunate rebirth. Okay, so it's not an easy ride where you can, just you get ordained and then, well, I don't have to work and they'll feed me and they'll take care of me, so sure. Yeah, it's not like that. Okay, the commentary on the numerical discourses explains 4 ways of enjoying or using requisites. Here are the requisites of the 4 requisites for life: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. So enjoyment with theft, that's the first way, is when a monastic transgresses precepts, has poor conduct, yet uses the requisites offered with faith. Okay, so this is likened to stealing because the requisites were offered for those who practice well. So if you don't keep the precepts well and yet accept offerings, you're creating incredible negative karma. That's called enjoyment with theft. Then enjoyment with debt is when a monastic with correct conduct enjoys offerings without reflecting on the kindness, generosity, and merit of the donor, and without dedicating for the donor's welfare. So it's incredibly important when you accept offerings from people to dedicate for their welfare, rejoice in their merit. Okay, so this person consumes the requisites but has not fulfilled his or her commitment to the donor. Okay, so it's not like people give you things and you say, thank you very much. It's you have a commitment to the donor. Yeah. Okay, enjoyment like an inheritance is when training Aryas enjoy offerings. Since they are on their way to becoming arhats, it is as if they were using the inheritance that will later become theirs. Okay, so they've already achieved realizations of emptiness. They're on their way to arhatship. It's like the arhats are the fully deserving ones, so they're getting their inheritance early. Okay, enjoyment like an inheritance is I read about that one. Enjoyment as an owner is arhat's use of requisites, since they have eradicated all pollutants and fulfilled the aim of the path. The offerings are theirs to use. So offerings are, when they say the Sangha is worthy of offerings, that's principally referring to the arhats who have eliminated all the pollutants, and then by extension, the stream enterers, the once returners, the non-returners, they're like an inheritance. Those of us who keep the precepts well and do our best, but we don't dedicate for the donors, are like, receiving it with a debt. And those of us who don't keep our precepts well and just accept offerings, it's like a thief. Yeah, like stealing. Okay. And then, then His Holiness included in the book, this is excerpts from a poem that he wrote in 1973 called The Joy of the Pratimoksha Discipline. So, a translation of the poem he wrote. We fortunate ones who follow our spirit, our supreme teacher, the impeccable one, the Buddha, it is becoming for us to engage with pure faith in uncompromised ethical conduct. Externally pure, internally pure, beneficial and joyful, both here and beyond, meaning in the next lives. Medicine for both self and others, marvelous, we have met the Buddha's way. Though difficult, we have encountered it this once. Those who seize it are even fewer. With firm determination in our hearts, observe pure conduct by all means possible. Beyond doubt, this discipline subdues the extremely coarse afflictions, even the dukkha natural to householders' lives. What need to mention that this discipline eases that too? The supreme mind of bodhicitta, the lifeline of the bodhisattva path, concentrations such as the union of serenity and insight, and so forth, what escapes being produced by this discipline? So this is emphasizing that of all the trainings, ethical conduct, concentration, wisdom, the foundation is ethical discipline. Yeah, that's where we start. We have to build a good foundation in our daily lives of living ethically. If we can't do that, thinking that we're going to gain single-pointed concentration and realize emptiness, it's a little bit unrealistic. Okay? Not a little bit, greatly unrealistic. Okay. The wondrous and marvelous, profound path of Tantra, the method to realize selflessness with the subtlest level of mind, that too is founded on this discipline. So here he's saying, if you want to practice the bodhisattva path, if you want to practice the tantric path, it's all done on the basis of the pratimoksha precepts. The state of a Buddha, the inseparable union of compassion and emptiness, emaho, the swiftest path leading to it, that too relies on this discipline for its cause. Therefore, O intelligent friends, do not disparage or treat as trivial the pratimoksha ethical discipline, which originates in the Sravaka scriptures. Sravaka means the hearers, okay, that vehicle. Know that the discipline is praised as the basis and root of the doctrine. Strive to follow it well, supported by study and analysis, with mindfulness, introspective awareness, and conscientiousness. Guard well with utmost striving, with personal integrity and due respect. Do not give in to indifference and indolence, lest you should squander the very root of steadfast well-being. Okay? So really emphasizing whether you become a monastic or take the 5 lay precepts or don't take any precepts, but try to abandon the 10 non-virtues, that all of that is the foundation of everything else that comes on the path. So we shouldn't think that we can, ethical conduct, that sounds like Sunday school. You shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And I'm sick and tired of it because I'm from the free generation. We shouldn't have that attitude. But really work to have inner freedom, which is freedom from clinging and craving, freedom from anger, freedom from confusion. And the root of all of that is, the pratimoksha ethical conduct. So very important. I often call the pratimoksha ethical conduct, stop being a jerk. Yeah? Because that's basically what it's asking us to do is, when we look in life, the actions that are most harmful, that people are engaged in the most, that's jerk-like behavior, isn't it? When you refrain from killing and stealing and sleeping around and, lying and taking intoxicants and so on and so forth, then, the mind becomes peaceful and our problems, even in this life, are greatly reduced. I mean, just you read in the newspaper, what are all the problems? Yeah. They're all due to people not keeping as the basic thing, the abandoning the 10 non-virtues. Yeah. Don't you think? When you think, what's the newspaper about? Killing, sleeping around, dear Donald, stealing, lying. You're going to see, what is it that's bumming people out about a lot of the politicians and CEOs. It's basic ethical conduct. Harsh speech, divisive speech, gossip, all these kinds of things, if we look, they cause us interminable problems here and now, and through them we create all sorts of, destructive karma that is going to ripen in lower rebirths and that obscures our mind from understanding the Dharma and gaining realizations. Okay, so that's the chapter on ethical conduct. We're moving along. Woo! Okay, then the next chapter is concentration. How you're training in concentration. So this one comes after ethical conduct, because ethical conduct subdues your body and speech, concentration subdues your mind. In subduing your body and speech, you develop 2 mental factors, mindfulness and introspective awareness. These 2 mental factors are crucially important when we try and develop concentration too. Okay, so mindfulness, woo, what people call mindfulness nowadays, I don't know. What mindfulness means in Buddhism, okay, is it's combined with wisdom, and it's the word for mindfulness is the same word as to remember. So in terms of ethical conduct, we remember our precepts, we remember our values. Yeah. In terms of concentration, we remember our object of meditation, so we can focus on it. Yeah. In terms of our daily behavior, we need introspective awareness that monitors our behavior and what are we doing to make sure that we have our mindfulness on our values and our precepts. In concentration, ethical introspective awareness monitors the mind to see if we're on our object of meditation, or if we're falling asleep, if we're daydreaming, if we're, in La La Land with Peter Pan. Okay? So concentration is based on the higher training in ethical conduct. Okay. Now, one thing that's helpful in understanding about concentration, and I'm going to read this section here, is understanding the difference between the realms of existence and spheres of consciousness. Okay, this is on page 84. Okay, so some familiarity with realms, which are places or planes of existence. The Sanskrit word is bhumi, which also means ground. And sphere of consciousness, avakara. Okay, as these two are presented in the Pali Abhidharma, is helpful before training to gain samadhi, and it helps us really understand what samadhi is about. So when we're talking about the realms, okay, samsara, cyclic existence, consists of three realms: the desire, material, and immaterial realms. Our realm is the desire realm because we're desiring sense objects. The material realm is also called the form realm, is a state of concentration where they have bodies, but the bodies are not flesh and bone and so substantial like ours. The immaterial realm is also gained through deep concentration, and there the beings do not have any type of gross body. Yeah. So in terms of the actual happiness in samsara, the desire realm has the lowest kind, then the material realm, then the immaterial realm. However, progressing up and even being born in the immaterial realm doesn't work in terms of getting us out of cyclic existence, because they say the bliss is so strong, or the equanimity is so strong and it's so peaceful that you have no wish to generate wisdom, and you have no wish to get out of samsara, because you're just kind of lost in your blissful concentration. Okay, so they say that the desire realm, the realm we live in, is actually better for gaining liberation, and especially the human realm, because we have a balance of suffering that reminds us of the need to practice, and well-being, which, so that we aren't in constant pain all the time and can practice. Okay, so that's why the precious human life, one of the reasons why it's said to be so precious. Okay, so those are the realms. Okay, so corresponding to these three realms are the three spheres of consciousness: the desire or sense sphere consciousness, the material sphere consciousness, and the immaterial sphere consciousness. Okay, there also exists supramundane consciousnesses, for the beings who are out of cyclic existence. So the spheres of consciousness are mental states, while the realms are planes of existence into which sentient beings are born. So we're born into a realm. Each realm has its own sphere of consciousness. However, as we'll see in the next paragraph, sometimes you can be born in one realm and by practicing generate the sphere of consciousness of an upper realm. Okay, so the three spheres of consciousness are mundane states of consciousness. They are included within samsara and true dukkha. Okay, while occurring most often in its corresponding realm, a particular sphere of consciousness is not limited to that realm. For example, the material sphere of consciousness occurs most frequently in beings born in the material realm. Okay? However, a human being who is born in the desire realm may cultivate deep concentration such that when he goes into meditative absorption, his mind becomes a material sphere consciousness. Okay? So the body is the desire realm, but the mind, they have renounced, or at least temporarily suppressed, all of the grasping at desire realm objects, and they've developed certain mental factors, which we'll get into, which enable them to have deep states of concentration, such that their mind becomes the mind of the first level of concentration. The term in Pali is jhana, in Sanskrit is dhyana. Okay, so it's possible as a human being to enter meditative states that are of the upper realms. And that's what happens when these beings gain really deep levels of concentration. Okay? According to the depth of his concentration, he attains the first, second, third, or fourth jhana. Okay, that's in the material realm. If his concentration is even more subtle, his mind becomes an immaterial sphere consciousness. But when he emerges from meditation, his mind is again a desire sphere consciousness. Okay, so in meditation, you are in that sphere, you come out of meditation, your senses are functioning, your consciousness is again desire realm. If a human being attains a specific level of meditative absorption and maintains it through the rest of her life, she creates the karma to be born in that realm after death. For example, a meditator who has attained the sphere of consciousness called the base of nothingness of the immaterial realm creates the karma to be born in the realm of the base of material consciousness, the base of nothingness after death. Okay, so this is what happens when people don't have renunciation of samsara and don't generate wisdom, is they attain these states of concentration, remain in them for long periods of time because they're so blissful. Yeah, when they die, they have the karma through meditating in these states to be born, to be born in that realm. So somebody as a human being may, let's say, progress first, second, third, fourth of the four meditative stabilizations, then go into the formless realm, the immaterial realm, and the first one there is infinite space. So let's say they actualize that meditation on infinite space. When they die, then they get born in that realm of infinite space, where they don't have a gross body. They're in that meditative absorption from the moment of birth until the moment of death. There's no renunciation of all samsara, so they're not accumulating merit or deepening their wisdom or bodhicitta or anything like that. And after the karma to be born in that very blissful state of concentration, expires, then kerplunk, they're back down in the desire realm. Okay, so that's why our teachers warn us about getting attached to blissful states of meditation. Yeah, they really emphasize generating wisdom, having a thorough understanding of the entire Buddhist worldview and Buddhist path, so that we don't get stuck in that kind of blissful samadhi. Okay, so in the chapter on concentration, it goes into the different kinds of objects that are recommended in the Pali tradition, recommended in the Sanskrit tradition, to use as objects of meditation. So in the Pali tradition, it's the 10 kasinas, which are, elements, earth, water, and colors. The 10 foul objects, so, corpses and so on, that you meditate on and seeing the body is foul. The 10 recollections of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, ethical conduct, and so on. The 4 divine abidings, so those are the 4 immeasurables: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The meditation objects of the 4 immaterial states. Okay, so I already talked about those. So they're called the base of infinite space, the bases of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothing, and neither discrimination nor non-discrimination, which is also called the peak of samsara. Then there's another meditation object, is the one discrimination, is the repulsiveness of food. I'm sure nobody here wants to do that one. And and the last one is the one analysis, which is defining the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Okay. Then within the Pali tradition, when they talk about the process of developing samadhi, they talk about developing 3 nimitta, or signs. Okay. So I want to read this because it's quite interesting. Okay. So 3 signs are cultivated in the process of developing samadhi: the preliminary work sign, the learning or acquired sign, and the counterpart sign. Using the example of an earth kasina, so that would be like a sphere of earth, that is put on a board that you develop concentration on. Okay, the meditator makes the kasina disc, a round disc of clean clay about 4 fingers wide, that is placed on a board in front of the meditator. With her eyes open, she looks at it, thinking, earth, earth. When the image of earth is firm in her mind, because she's looking at it, she then closes her eyes and continues to focus, earth, earth. Okay, and so at that time she's developing a mental image of the earth. The actual object of meditation now is the image of earth, which is an object of mental consciousness, not visual consciousness. So when she was looking with her eyes at the piece of clay, that's with the visual consciousness. And that's done to familiarize yourself with the object. Then you close your eyes, you develop a mental image of the object. Okay? And that's called the preliminary work sign. And that's an object of your mental consciousness. Your visual consciousness is not operating at that time because you've closed your eyes or you've lowered your eyes to meditate. Okay? So it's very important for people to understand that serenity, or shamatha, and samadhi, or concentration, these are attained with our mental consciousness, not with sense consciousnesses. Yeah, so you don't gain samadhi by staring at a candle. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to gain some, use the candle as your object, you might look at it, but then you close your eyes and use that image. However, you want the image to be very still. If the candle's flickering, your mind is also going to flicker. Okay. Yeah, I don't know where this thing of candles came in. Yeah, none of my teachers teach about candles. I haven't read about it in any scripture. And yet in the West, people always think about looking at candles. I wonder where that came from.
Practicing yoga, when you look at the candle and close your eyes and visualize it, and something working with your eyes.
Okay, so it's done in the yoga tradition. Okay, so that's where it came from. Thank you. Okay, so that's the preliminary work sign. With the mental consciousness, you have your image. If the image fades, she opens her eyes and looks at the earth kasina to refresh her visualization, and again lowers her eyes and meditates on the image of earth appearing to her mental consciousness. Okay, in this way she develops the sign, forming the image in her mind, sometimes with open eyes and sometimes with them closed. Okay, at this initial stage of practice, her concentration is called preliminary concentration, and most of her effort goes towards being mindful of the object, trying to hold it in mind without forgetting it, noticing when a distraction or other hindrance has arisen, applying the antidote, and bringing the mind back to the meditation object. Okay. She continues to develop the preliminary work sign until the learning sign arises. This subtler object replaces the preliminary work sign and arises when the meditator sees the mental image just as clearly when her eyes are closed as when she is looking at the kasina. So at this point, you not only have the general image, but it's very, very vivid in your mind. Yeah, extremely vivid. It's not, spaced out or blurry or changing colors or anything like that, okay? It's very vivid, again, in the mind. Now she stops looking at the external kasina and focuses exclusively on the mental object, the learning sign. Okay. However, if her apprehension of the learning sign fades, she again looks at the physical earth kasina with her eyes. Okay, so course engagement is important at this point to establish familiarity with the learning sign. Yeah, course engagement is one of the 5 jhanic factors, one of the 5 factors that help you to attain serenity and to enter into the levels of meditative stabilization. As she continues meditating, the 5 hindrances, which we'll go through briefly, we did them just this last week. Okay, so sensual pleasure, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness or excitement, and remorse, and doubt. Okay, so those are the 5 hindrances. So as she continues meditating, the 5 hindrances are gradually suppressed by the 5 absorption factors, which we'll get to in a minute. Here, suppression means manifest hindrances do not appear. Suppression of the 5 hindrances leads to greater clarity and ability to discern the functioning of the mind. The mind and body are at ease, the mind is virtuous, and one feels either pleasure or equanimity. Okay? So you have pretty powerful concentration at this point. And so here when we talk about suppressing attachment or anger, we're not talking about it doesn't have the meaning of psychological suppression, which is not very healthy. Here those things are suppressed by the power of concentration. Okay? And they're temporarily suppressed. They are not abandoned. Why aren't they abandoned? Because to abandon these hindrances and abandon any afflictions completely, we have to realize emptiness directly. Okay? So untroubled by manifest afflictions and the 5 hindrances, the mind becomes more concentrated. Okay, the counterpart sign, this is the 3rd sign, the counterpart sign arises and access concentration is attained. So that's serenity, actual serenity or shamatha. Okay, so first you have the preliminary work sign. Yeah, when you're getting it, going back and forth with the between looking at it and your consciousness. Then you have the learning sign, when it's as vivid in your mental consciousness as it is with sense consciousnesses. And then you have the counterpart sign, when the 5 hindrances have been fully suppressed. Okay, and that's the actual shamatha, serenity, or what they call access concentration. It's called access concentration because it's the access to the first meditative stabilization. Okay, so it's sometimes it's called neighboring, neighborhood concentration or something, because you're in the neighborhood. You're getting closer to entering into the first meditative stabilization. While imperfections are seen in the learning sign, the counterpart sign is brighter and more purified. Luminous, beautiful, and vivid, it has no physical color or shape and is an object only of mental consciousness. It lacks the 3 characteristics of impermanence and so forth. Stabilizing the counterpart sign is difficult, so the meditator must guard it carefully and continue to practice to attain full absorption. Okay, so serenity begins with the state of access concentration prior to the first jhana. Okay. Yeah, and so, okay. Whereas access concentration, also called the state of suppression, abandonment, is marked by the suppression of the 5 hindrances. The first jhana, so the first meditative stabilization, is full absorption and is marked by full stable development of the 5 absorption factors. So the 5 absorption factors are coarse engagement, refined engagement, rapture, bliss, and one-pointedness. Okay, so those are fully developed when you actually enter the first jhana. Okay. When the absorption factors are present in access concentration, they are not firm, and a meditator can lose access concentration easily. But in full jhana, the absorption factors are stable and strong, and a shift in the sphere of consciousness occurs so that that person's mind now becomes an immaterial level mind of the first meditative absorption. Okay? The mind in full absorption does not perceive sensory objects, but functions like a material sphere consciousness. The person is in seated meditation at this time. Okay, so attaining this, depends very heavily on suppressing the 5 hindrances. So in order to suppress them by the level of our concentration, we have to first gain some control of them just in our regular life. Okay, so as we all know, attachment to sensual objects is a big distraction, not only for concentration, but also in our lives. And here we can see that if you keep good ethical conduct, you're already getting in the habit of not getting trapped by attachment to sense objects. So you can begin to see why ethical conduct is the basis for developing concentration. Yeah. Similar, the second hindrance, ill will. Yeah, if we keep our practice ethical conduct well, then our anger will get less and less. Okay, so that makes it easier to concentrate, and so on. So we have to develop, some ability to overcome these 5 hindrances with our ethical conduct, and then when we get to concentration, then we become capable of suppressing them by the power of the concentration. Yeah. As we go up in the stages of concentration, if you look on the chart on page 92, it talks about what factors are present in the first, second, third, fourth of the levels of concentration, and which ones you can see which ones are abandoned as you go through, and which new ones come on. Okay, so I won't go into that because it gets too detailed at this point. Okay. So, we talk about the 4 material level, 4 immaterial level concentrations. Both of the traditions also talk about the 8 meditative liberations. Okay. And then both traditions also talk about the super knowledges that you gain when you have deep concentration. Okay. Okay, so this section is quite interesting. You want me to read it? Should I read it? Well, the most important aim of Buddhist teachings is ceasing rebirth under the influence of ignorance and karma and attaining nirvana. The sutras praise other spiritual accomplishments as well. One is mastery over the dimensions of the mind, so the jhanas and the 4 immaterial absorptions, which are praised for their peace and ease. Another is mastery over nature and external phenomena, gained by actualizing the first 5 super knowledges, which were going to come. And a byproduct of samadhi, these 5 give meditators supernormal powers, supernormal physical and mental powers, enabling them to perform feats that cannot be explained by available scientific means. While some non-Buddhists see these as the purpose of the path, the Buddha emphasized that only nirvana is actual liberation from dukkha. Thus, when cultivating the super knowledges, it is essential to have a good motivation and take care not to fall prey to conceit and clinging. Compassionately using these powers to benefit others and spread the Buddha's teachings is meaningful. Okay, so in terms of bodhisattvas, they all develop the super knowledges because these particular physical and mental powers, supernormal powers, enable them to contact teachers with whom they have a strong karmic connection, to meet the students with whom they have strong karmic connection. It enables them to attend teachings in many, many different places and gives them all sorts of ability to benefit sentient beings and further their practice. In the in the path to arhatship, not all practitioners develop these super normal powers, the super knowledges. Some people choose to develop them, some people don't. Okay? And they can also be developed by people who, just because they're attained by the power of concentration, just because somebody has these powers does not mean that they're a bodhisattva or they're a stream enter or, they have any other kind of realizations. They may have these because of just developing concentration. Many non-Buddhists have these. Some people have supernatural powers by the force of karma. But the thing is that all these kinds of supernatural powers in these contexts are not perfect. So that's why don't rely 100% on fortune tellers and mediums and psychics and things like that. People, I always like to tell the story. We were invited, the Abbey, to have some booth at some New Age fair. Yeah, was it in Spokane? Yeah, yeah, you were there. And so we thought, okay, we'll open something and bring some Dharma books and meet some people and spread the Dharma. So our little table is here. There was a psychic on this side and a psychic on this side. Yeah, so the psychics got lots of business. People just walked by us and looked at things and went to the psychics. We watched them at the psychics. It was fascinating. First of all, you pay for the psychics, which you're willing to do. Pay for the Dharma, or even give an offering for the Dharma, no. But pay for psychics, yes. Why? Because the psychic talks about me. Yeah? So they're sitting there like this, while the psychic is talking. It was just fascinating to watch this, Just, yeah. And the psychic saying different things. And the Tibetans always say, if a psychic tells you that you're going to get sick and you need to purify your negative karma, you do it right away. If the Buddha tells you you've created negative karma and you're going to get sick, you say, what's that? Yeah? It's so interesting, isn't it? Yeah? If the Buddha says, keep good ethical conduct so that you'll have a good rebirth, what's he preaching morality to me for? If a psychic tells you, be honest in your business deals because it'll bring you happiness in the future, oh yeah, okay, I will do that. Okay. This tells you something about our level of spiritual advancement, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it was fascinating at that thing, Then there was people who were getting their third eyes opened, remember? And other people with, crystals going back and forth. And what else was there?
There was something about meditating with a pyramid on your head that led you to different states of meditative development or something.
Okay, yeah, so putting a pyramid on your head and, all sorts of things like that. The only time, okay, I've taught for many years in many places. The only time nobody has showed up for a Dharma talk I gave was in Florida. Okay, now we all know about Florida. It's in the news constantly, isn't it? With one thing or another. So it was at some kind of New Age place. They asked me to give a talk, but their New Age place had all sorts of machines that somehow changed your alpha wave, beta wave, I don't know what kind of waves, And so you sit down in one of these chairs, nice comfy chair, and they put this thing on, and it's flashing, and there's music or sounds or something like that. And it's supposed to, take you to a higher level of consciousness. I tried it. They wanted me to. It did absolutely nothing for me. But everybody who came, instead of coming to the Dharma talk at that place, they all went and, of course, paid money to sit there with that. It was quite interesting, yeah? So I always remembered that that time. Yeah? Like, I came all the way here for this. Well, I did. It gave me a good story to tell. Okay, so the supernormal powers. Okay, so In the Pali tradition, it says they're cultivated on the powerful concentration of the fourth jhana. Okay, so they help us defy ordinary scientific laws by gaining mastery over nature. So with them, we can make our body into many bodies, absorb these bodies back into a single body. We can become invisible, appearing and vanishing at will, pass through walls, go through mountains with ease, go under the earth, walk on water, fly in space. Okay? So, if you have a good reason for doing these, for Dharma purposes and to benefit sentient beings, having these abilities are quite useful. If you want to gain them just so you can show off, not so useful. Then the divine ear is clairaudience. So that's the ability to hear sounds in the human world, heavenly realms, and other realms and directions where sentient beings dwell. So you can hear those faraway sounds as easily as if they were nearby. So then you could hear what people are gossiping about you across, in another city. Yeah. So you see why you need a good motivation to have these. Yeah, so you don't use it for that. Then understanding the mind of others is the ability to know the mental states of others. You know who has attachment, who's free of attachment, what level of the path people are on, and so on. Recollection of past lives gives you the ability to know the particular details of our own lives for eons in the past. The purpose of that, is not just so that we can know we were Cleopatra or Mark Antony. Have you ever noticed so many people are Cleopatra, so many people are Mark Antony? Nobody remembers being Cleopatra's servant. And nobody remembers being Mark Antony's servant, So it's not so important to remember who we were in previous lives so that we can say, I was so-and-so, and use it for ego adornment. The purpose of this is, if you remember this, it will really increase your renunciation of samsara. I mean, think about it. If you could remember past lives, being born, getting sick, aging, dying, birth, aging, sick, dying, birth, aging, sick, dying, doing all these wonderful things. Maybe one time in the previous life you were president of, some country, and the next life you were in the hell realm, and then the next life, somewhere else. And you remember all these kinds of things. Are you going to want to get out of samsara? You bet. Yeah, because you begin to see no matter how high you go in samsara, there is no happiness, no stable happiness to be gained. Okay? So very useful in that respect. And then with the divine eye, we can see beings dying and reappearing in their next life according to their karma. Okay? So then that, whoa, boy, can you imagine watching other people die and being reborn according to their karma? That's going to be heavy duty too, and that will really, again, help your renunciation grow and help your compassion grow. So those are the first 5 super knowledges. Those are mundane. Okay, so in other words, they can be gained without having realized emptiness or selflessness. Yeah, and the non-Buddhists also can gain these. Okay, then the 6th super knowledge is called knowing the destruction of all pollutants. And it does not require the full power of samadhi. All the other ones, you have to gain the 4th meditative stabilization. Here, you can ascertain it on the basis of any of the 4 jhanas, or according to the commentary with access concentration. Lama Tsongkhapa agrees this can be attained with access concentration. Okay, so this super knowledge realizes the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, okay, which is nirvana. Yeah, it's the liberation of mind is because one has serenity, or a higher state of concentration, and the liberation by wisdom is because one has the wisdom perceiving nirvana. Okay, so yeah, so that's the real one that we want to get. It's interesting. Yeah, because again, not everybody who becomes an arhat or is following the hearer path strives to gain these. Okay, okay. But let's see. Those who attain. Okay, maybe I better read the whole thing. While the Buddha taught the three spiritual accomplishments of nirvana, meditative absorptions, and super knowledges, he did not expect all his disciples to accomplish the latter two, the meditative absorptions and the super knowledges. He knew his followers had different aptitudes and interests. Someone who attains nirvana but not the other two abilities is one liberated by wisdom. This person may attain jhana or he may attain liberation without jhana, developing wisdom and eradicating defilements on the basis of access concentration. Those who attain nirvana as well as the various meditative absorptions have mastery of a wide range of mental states and are called those liberated in both ways. So they're liberated by wisdom, and they're liberated by mind because they have these deep mental states of concentration. Shravakas who attain nirvana as well as mastery over the mental states and the super knowledges that follow from them are called arhats having the 6 super knowledges. Okay, and in Theravada countries we find all 3 of these persons to this day. So you may not, just to point out something, in our tradition, when we take the 8 Mahayana precepts, the prayer that we do, that prayer is very, very similar to the one in the Pali tradition when they take the 8 one-day precepts. And you'll notice in the wording of that, when we talk about following the way of the arhats as the reason for taking the precepts, we say they possess a mind properly liberated, a wisdom properly liberated. So that's this liberated by wisdom, okay, because they have the wisdom realizing nirvana. A mind properly liberated is, liberation by mind, or one liberated by mind, meaning that they have the deep states of concentration, or at least access concentration. Okay. And then there's one story. I'll read this to you too, because I was so impressed with it. Okay, so there's an Indian laywoman named Deepama. Her biography is in our library, okay? So she was renowned as a stream enterer. She passed away a little over 20 years ago. At the request of her meditation teacher, she mastered all 8 meditative absorptions and the 5 super knowledges. She would resolve to sit in a particular absorption for a specific amount of time and emerge from it exactly at that time. That's what you do when you have these deep states of meditative equipoise. When you sit down, you make a determination how long you want to be in it, and then you come out of the meditation at that point. Her teacher attested to her powers. One day he saw her floating in the sky above the treetops outside his windows. This is her meditation teacher. And another time he watched her dive into the ground and emerge from it. One day her teacher and a professor arranged for someone to come be with her in one location, but she arrived for an appointment with the professor 10 miles away at the same time. There are many such stories about her, yet she always remained a humble and sincere Dharma practitioner. She was extremely humble. She died in an interesting manner. She bowed to the Buddha and passed away before she could stand up. That would be a neat way to die, huh? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so like I said, the bodhisattvas, they will cultivate these 5 super knowledges because it's very good for their practice and for increasing the benefit to the Dharma, increasing the benefit to sentient beings. Okay, then we come to the Sanskrit traditions, discussion of concentration, which I won't talk about a lot because I think many of you have had teachings on this before, or at least some of you have. So here there's different kinds of objects too. So extensive objects, objects for purifying behavior, objects of skillful observation, objects for purifying afflictions, okay? And then there's several other things like the image of the Buddha, the conventional clear and cognizant nature of the mind, and so on, okay? In the Sanskrit tradition, mostly in Maitreya's texts, he talks about 5 faults and 8 antidotes to those 5 faults that arise when you're trying to gain concentration. The Pali tradition talks about the 5 hindrances. The 5 faults aren't exactly the same, but in addition, but actually, whether you're practicing concentration in one tradition or another, you have to abandon the 5 hindrances and the 5 faults. Okay? So the first fault is laziness. So we can't get ourselves to the meditation cushion. Yeah, or we're super busy, we can't, do that, or we put it off, or we're discouraged, so we can't get ourselves there. The way to overcome that is having faith in meditative samadhi and concentration, developing the aspiration to generate that, putting an effort, and then generating this mental factor called pliancy, which is flexibility of body and mind. The second hindrance we want to overcome is forgetting the instruction. You know how you sit down. First thing is you can't get yourself to the cushion. Second thing, you get yourself to the cushion, you can't stay on the object worth beans, can you? Your mind's all over the place. Okay, goes into anger, attachment, you fall asleep even though you slept 10 hours the night before. Okay, so mindfulness is the antidote. Mindfulness remembers the object. Okay, then the third hindrance, we put excitement and laxity together. So excitement, the mind is too high, too excited about an object of attachment. Laxity is the mind is not totally clear, and then there's various stages where you get less and less clear. Okay, so the antidote to that is introspective awareness, because that is what, it monitors your mind to see if you're still on your meditative object of meditation or not. Okay, the fourth hindrance is non-application, which means you get a hindrance, you have one of the faults arising, but you don't apply the antidote to it. Okay, so the remedy for that is applying the antidote. The fifth fault is over-application. So you've already applied the antidote, the fault has gone away, and you keep on applying the antidote. So the remedy to that is to have equanimity, to just an equal mind that doesn't do things that don't need to be done. Then Maitreya talks about 9 stages of sustained attention, by which we develop gradually more and more focus and attention on the object of meditation, and we overcome the various faults that come, the laziness, the forgetting of the object, excitement and laxity, not applying the antidote and over applying it, where you successfully generate those. So that's described again in Maitreya's text. Okay, then there's a brief section in the book on Chinese Buddhism. Okay, so because to again show that the Chinese don't do blank-minded meditation. They're not all space cases. Okay, and I also, we also put in here, in addition to Master Ji's synopsis of his treatises on concentration. Was it in here? Oh, maybe we didn't put it in here. But His Holiness, some years ago, he was in New York. He was invited to give the teachings. This was maybe the late 90s. And he was invited by Master Shenyan, the master of Dharma Drum Mountain. Dharma Drum Mountain. Who was really, really fantastic master, invited His Holiness to give some teachings. And then they had a dialogue at the end where they were talking to each other. And it was beautiful because they were clearly quite comfortable with each other. And His Holiness said, we had this Chinese master come into Tibet who did blank-minded meditation. And, do you people do that? And, he asked it in a very sweet way. And Master Shenyan said, no, we don't meditate like that. That just, you just become a space case. Yeah. And then they also talked about this thing of instant enlightenment, which, is also widely discussed. And what comes out of it is that, what enlightenment means in different traditions. The word can mean different things to different people in different traditions. Okay, so in Chinese Buddhism, when they refer to instant enlightenment, or sudden enlightenment, it's not that, you weren't a meditation practitioner and the first time you sit down to meditate, instantly you're fully awakened and all your afflictions are abandoned. No, that's not what it means. What it means is, you've been practicing for a while, and then you get a little glimpse of emptiness, something that, is really tasty. But that when you get that, then you have to go back because it's not stable and you haven't realized it completely or in depth. You have to go back and do all the other training before that in order to deepen that understanding. Yeah. So it's not quick, cheap, and easy. Yeah. You may get an aha moment, but you have to go back and, generate all the other qualities of mind in order to make it a stable realization. Okay. So we finished the review in one day. Yeah? So then tomorrow we can start on the higher training of meditation. And so I'll do then what I did last year is I'll just read the text and then comment on it as we read it. Okay? So, questions? Comments? Yeah.
I have a question about the Earth sphere.
Mm-hmm.
How did just looking at it until your mental image is just like the physical of your eyes consciousness. So when I've had dreams recently where they're so clear
Mm-hmm.
and they really feel like really bright colors, waking life. And so, and of course when I wake up, I'm like, okay, I was dreaming. But the images are very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's my mental consciousness
Mm-hmm.
producing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it that kind of clarity that we're trying to achieve? In other words, being able to see as clearly as we would in a dream when we're trying to achieve
Okay. So when we're trying to get a clear image of the object, is it similar to having a very clear image in your dream? Well, you know, I haven't had your dreams. So I can't assess, and I don't have any of these supernormal powers to know how clear the images were when you saw things in your dreams. So I can't really comment on that. Yeah. The description just says that they are very clear and vivid in your mind. So, you know, whatever clear and vivid means. We sometimes think clear and vivid has a spoonful of inherent existence in it. So we don't want to add that. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about this line where it says, this is in the part talking about the counterpart sign in the Pali tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So it's referring to a mental object, and it says it lacks the three characteristics of impermanence and so forth. I'm assuming that means suffering and selflessness.
Yeah.
But doesn't a mental image still have those characteristics?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. Why in the Pali tradition does it say that the counterpart sign, you know, that namitta, which is just a very, very refined light, why do they say it doesn't have the three characteristics? I wondered that too. Yeah. So I can't say I have an official answer. I can imagine because you see it vividly and at the same time you know it's not real. Okay? It's a very clear sign, but you know that there's nothing there. So, you know, it has that sense of being like an illusion, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm still curious about that sixth super knowledge, knowing the destruction of all pollutants. Is that an exalted wisdom mind that has attained some sort of insight?
Okay, so is the sixth super knowledge, the knowledge of the
Destruction of all pollutants.
yeah, of the destruction of all pollutants. That's the mind that after you've realized nirvana says, I've realized nirvana.
So it's just
It's
a recognition inside, in that mind itself.
yeah, well, I think when you're in that meditative equipoise, you know, if we equate nirvana with emptiness, when you have a direct realization of emptiness, you're not saying to yourself, now I've realized emptiness. So I think this is what happens afterwards, because there's the stories of all the arhats, you know, after they've attained nirvana, they say, I've led the holy life, I've, you know, done what needs to be done, there's no more rebirth. So it's that mind that knows that you've accomplished that. Mm-hmm.
What exactly does liberation by wisdom mean?
Okay, so what does liberation by wisdom mean? It means that your mind is liberated because you've generated the wisdom that knows nirvana. Okay, this is according to the Pali tradition.
And that's generated not through the jhanas, but through some other means?
Through gaining wisdom, first you realize the three this is speaking according to the Pali tradition. First you realize the three characteristics: impermanence, the nature of dukkha, and selflessness. Then, when you're focusing on those very deeply, then there's a breakthrough that happens where you have, where you perceive nirvana. Okay. So, okay. So it's done, you know, because you've developed a lot of wisdom to understand the three characteristics. And then your wisdom gets like fully embodied, fully forceful and powerful, so that there's that breakthrough into seeing nirvana.
Seems like you can skip the concentration.
No, you have to have pretty good concentration, at least access concentration. Yeah, at least access concentration, which is serenity. Yeah. So, that kind of goes with the sudden enlightenment. I sit down, I have no serenity, I have no insight, and then enlightenment. No. Okay. There's a lot. Uh-huh.
Could I ask you about equanimity as an antidote to the non-application or the over-application of antidotes?
Okay. So equanimity is the application, as the antidote to over-applying. Okay. So equanimity, there's many different meanings for equanimity and in different contexts. And here it just means the mind, it's kind of like the mind has no need to do anything because things are okay. So if you're over-applying the antidote, then you're just wasting your energy, and that's actually distracting you from your object of meditation, because you're meditating on the antidote instead of on the object of meditation. So equanimity is just keeping your mind balanced. You don't need to do anything. Okay? Yeah?
I'm a bit confused between the difference of mindfulness and introspective awareness.
Okay, so the difference between mindfulness and introspective awareness. These two come together a lot, so it is sometimes difficult to exactly tell them apart. But basically, introspective awareness is the one that is monitoring the mind. What is the mind doing? It says, on the object of meditation, is it falling asleep? What's going on? It's monitoring. And in our daily life actions, introspective awareness is aware, well, what am I doing? Yeah, and why am I doing this? How am I moving through space? How am I eating? Yeah, so that's the introspective awareness. Mindfulness is paying attention to, it's remembering, and paying attention with a bit of wisdom in it in your daily life to keeping good ethical conduct. So, here's how I want to move, here's what I want to do, what I don't want to do. You're mindful of that in your daily life behavior. In your meditation, you remember your your object of meditation. Let's say it's the image of the Buddha, or let's say it's the breath, whatever it is. So you remember that object. Yeah. Then introspective awareness comes in and checks and sees if your mindfulness is still functioning. If it is, then you leave things alone. If it isn't, because you're off the object, or maybe you're doing something ridiculous or silly or something that you don't need to do and you notice that you're doing that, then you notice that with introspective awareness, then you stop, you think about what do I need to be doing, and then you kind of recalibrate and make a different decision. Okay? Well, the mindfulness is what keeps you going in the direction you want to go in. And the introspective awareness is what checks up if you're still going in that direction. Okay? Yeah.
Two things. One is, I wanted to just mention that I read a lot of that Deepa Ma biography.
Uh-huh.
And she said at one point that she let those powers go because they were kind of involving ego for her. And then one of her students asked her, well, how long would it take you to get them, thinking it would be a long time? And I can't remember if she said something like, oh, I think, I worked at it, something, it was either like 3 days or 2 weeks. It was something.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so Deepa Ma eventually, stopped she only did those powers because her meditation teacher asked her to develop them. But then when they became distracting, she stopped. Yeah.
The other thing I wondered about is, this thing about the 40 objects and that whole discussion,
Mm-hmm.
concentration, was in the Pali tradition, so it sounded to me like with access concentration you could reach nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
Would the Sanskrit tradition subscribe to that?
I would think that with the Pali tradition, with access concentration, you can reach nirvana. And Jay Rinpoche said with access concentration, you can realize emptiness. So I think it could be quite possible for an arhat to, somebody to attain arhatship with that. But bodhisattvas, they must have all the different levels. They must be able to go back and forth in and out of those different levels, back and forth, up and down among them very quickly. Because bodhisattvas have, they have to create the quality of an incredibly flexible mind that's so concentrated that it can do all these amazing things. Yeah, because bodhisattvas are trying to become Buddhas, so they're gonna, whatever is possible to do, they're gonna do it. Yeah, whereas some of the people wanting to become arhats, they do what is necessary to get to arhatship, and that's good enough. Yeah?
Well, somebody was talking about rainbow body.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a lot of people have been now found in China who've been in caves since the Cultural Revolution. They've been there. And then you were talking about food. So some are living on nutrients from the air.
Okay, so there's this practice called chulen, means taking the essence. And so it's a practice where you make pills using the essence of flowers. And so people do this when they are in a situation where they're unable to get food. And so they live off these pills, off the essence of flowers. And that enables them to stay in their secluded place and meditate very deeply. Okay? Rainbow body is a certain kind of attainment when a tantric practitioner passes away and their body essentially disappears except their nails and their the hair are left behind. Okay? But their consciousness has gone to the Pure Land. Okay. These are difficult practices. Okay. They are not common. Yeah.
A little bit late. We have chanting today.
Yes. Okay. Yes. In other words, be quiet. Okay.